The enemy who refused to fire. Imagine you are at 25,000 feet. The temperature is 60 degrees below zero. Your plane, a giant metal fortress, is being shredded. The nose is gone. The rudder is stuck. The tail gunner is dead, and the blood of your friends is freezing on the fuselage floor. You are all alone in the skies over Nazi Germany. Suddenly, you look to your right, and there he is, the nightmare of every Allied pilot, a Messerschmitt Bf 109 with the swastika on its tail. He is so close you can see the pilot's eyes. He has his finger on the trigger. You have no defense left. This is the end. But then, something impossible happens. The date was December 20th, 1943. The protagonist of this story is Second Lieutenant Charlie Brown. He was, essentially, a kid. Just 21 years old, a farm boy from West Virginia, flying his very first mission as an aircraft commander. His B-17 was named Ye Old Pub. The target was Bremen, Germany. But the mission turned into a disaster. Before they could even drop their bombs, anti-aircraft fire shattered the nose of the plane. Moments later, German fighters swarmed them. The damage was catastrophic. 2 engines were dead, the oxygen system failed, the hydraulic system was destroyed, and the tail section was hanging by a thread. Ye Old Pub fell behind the formation. It became a sitting duck, losing altitude and limping back toward England. Charlie Brown wrestled with the controls just to keep the wings level, while the crew desperately tried to keep the wounded alive. They were defenseless. On the ground at a German airfield sat Franz Stigler. Unlike Brown, Stigler was no rookie. He was a veteran Luftwaffe ace. On that specific day, Stigler was just one victory away from earning the Knight's Cross, Germany's highest military honor. Shooting down a heavy bomber like a B-17 would be his ticket to glory. While refueling his fighter, he saw Brown's plane passing low overhead, trailing smoke. Stigler didn't hesitate. He jumped into his Bf 109 and took off. For an expert pilot like him, this wouldn't be a dogfight. It would be an execution. The bomber was slow, low, and alone. He climbed rapidly, positioning himself behind the B-17's tail for the kill shot. He placed his finger on the trigger. All he had to do was squeeze. But Stigler didn't shoot. As he closed in, he saw something that shocked him. Through the massive holes in the bomber's fuselage, he could see the terrified American crew. He saw the tail gunner slumped over his weapon, dead, his blood freezing on the metal skin of the plane. He saw the panic of the survivors tending to the wounded. Stigler realized the B-17's guns were pointing down, completely useless. In that moment, a memory flooded Stigler's mind. Years earlier, his commanding officer in North Africa, Gustav Rodel, told him something that would change his life. "Honor is everything here. If I ever see or hear of you shooting at a man in a parachute, I will shoot you down myself." To Stigler, that wrecked plane was no longer a machine of war. Technically, it was just a steel parachute full of dying men. Shooting them wouldn't be combat, it would be murder. He took his finger off the trigger. Instead of attacking, Stigler pulled his fighter up alongside the B-17. Charlie Brown, the American pilot, looked to his right and couldn't believe his eyes. The German pilot was just feet away, wagging his wings and gesturing frantically. Stigler was trying to tell them to land in Germany and surrender, or to fly north to Sweden, a neutral country, where they would get medical care. The plane was in no condition to cross the North Sea to England, but Brown, in shock and terrified, didn't understand. He kept flying west. Stigler knew that if he left them, the German coastal anti-aircraft batteries would blow the bomber out of the sky in seconds. So, he did the unthinkable. He flew in tight formation with the enemy. The German gunners on the ground, seeing one of their own fighters glued to the bomber's wing, held their fire, afraid of hitting Stigler. He acted as a human shield, or rather, an aerial shield. He escorted them all the way to open water. Once they were out of range, Stigler looked at Brown one last time, offered a sharp salute, banked his plane, and turned back to Germany. Miraculously, Charlie Brown managed to land in England. The plane was so destroyed that nobody understood how it stayed airborne. Still shaking, Brown reported to his superiors what had happened. A German pilot had spared them and escorted them to safety. The reaction from the American command was cold. They classified the report as secret. They ordered Brown never to tell this story to anyone. The justification? We can't tell our crews that the Germans might be gentlemen, or they'll lose the will to fight. On the other side, Franz Stigler never told a soul either. In Nazi Germany, sparing the enemy was treason, punishable by death. The secret remained buried for more than 40 years. In 1986, now retired, Charlie Brown began having nightmares. He needed to know who that guardian angel was. He placed ads in aviation magazines looking for the German pilot. In Vancouver, Canada, an elderly man saw the ad. It was Franz Stigler, who had immigrated after the war. Stigler wrote a letter to Brown. When they finally spoke on the phone, Stigler described the damage to Brown's plane with such precision that the American began to weep. They finally met in person in 1990. In a hotel lobby, two old enemies of war hugged each other like long-lost brothers. They became best friends. They traveled together, visited each other's homes, and went fishing until the end of their lives. Franz Stigler passed away in March 2008. Charlie Brown died just a few months later, in November of the same year. Stigler left a quote etched in history. In 1940, I lost my only brother in the war. In 1990, I gained another. The story of Charlie Brown and Franz Stigler reminds us that even in humanity's darkest moments, compassion can survive. They prove that the enemy isn't always a monster, and that honor is worth more than any medal.